We're all looking for the Dynasty shortcut on how we can make a roster that'll last the test of time. Well, today I'm going to talk through some of the best tips and tricks for your Dynasty League. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and the podcast at FF After Dark. And thank you guys so much for checking this video out. I was kind of thinking what to do with this week's episode, and I was really kind of contemplating what is a good topic. There's no teams that really stand out that I wanted to do a breakdown as of just yet. OTAs and training camps are all just starting to pick up the rookies, and Dale and I were covering that last week. So the best thing to talk about right now as we head into another year of Dynasty football, this is kind of a redraft take as well, but it's universal across the board. It's going to be some of the best tips and tricks that I can give to you for how to make your roster a viable contender year in and year out. And it almost universally goes without question. I can do this almost every single year. And, is it because I'm the smartest man alive, or is it because I have the best spreadsheets? No, it's not. Because of these simple tips and tricks. I'm going to break them down for you guys here in just 1 minute. Before I do that though, if you can, please subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this, whether you think I'm a complete idiot. And some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here today is going to be very common sense, but sometimes I feel like in fantasy football, people get way too big brain, right? Where I'm an engineer. My job is to be big brain, to go into the depths and kind of look at this stuff more closely, analyze every single angle of this. But a lot of the times it's for marginal upgrades, right? For the very smallest of edges. And sometimes it's not even worth the effort of what we're all doing. Now, if you're a spreadsheet junkie out there, I get it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm not that type of person. Putting all the numbers, looking for this one trend of this one stat, that's never going to be something that I'm going to do. It's going to be more of a stats and film based approach. You look at these guys, you watch them every single week. How are they doing? And you combine that with, okay, I see these guys on the field. Are they living up to what I'm seeing in their stats, right? Is there a reason that I can come up with why these players are doing the things that they're doing? The why is so important in fantasy football. I feel like it's one of the last things that people ever talk about. So that said, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Find it over on YouTube. If you want the audio only, it's on Spotify, Google, Apple, anywhere that you can find your podcast. But please, again, just leave us a like, leave us a comment down below if you like this type of content. We'll be live again on Wednesday. We'll be talking through, I'm not sure what we're talking. We just finished our summer scouting series last week. So we went through all the different positions to talk about what your future first is worth going forward. We did the running backs, we did the receivers, we did the quarterbacks, and the one tight end, the lone tight end. That was a fun time. It's always fun to get an idea of what the next class is, just so that you guys can know roughly what that future first is worth. But yeah, we'll give you guys a spoiler on Twitter. If you follow us over on Twitter, we'll kind of give you guys a hint on what we're going to be talking about live on Wednesday. But make sure you guys tune into that live 9:30 Wednesday night. We're going to be taking live questions, all that fun stuff. So again, thank you guys for checking this out, and let's get into some of the tips and tricks that I wanted to talk about here as we go along. And number one, I'm not the most creative type, so I'm not going to try and come up with the clever titles and all this stuff. I'm just going to be straightforward with it, because I feel like a lot of times, again, you go into fantasy football and people are so, well, if I tell them this one thing, they're going to use that against me in the future. I have a podcast where people can listen to my thoughts on players all the time. And sometimes it means that I can't get a player that I like, but I'm never going to conceal what I'm thinking, because it just doesn't get you anywhere in fantasy football. Half the time in rookie drafts, people always give me so much crap because I know half of the first round, maybe 9-10 picks in the first round, how every single person is going to pick. Sometimes there's surprises. There's always those people that lie or they change their mind at the last second or whatever it may be. But generally, I know almost always the first 9-10 picks of my rookie drafts. And you know why? Very simple trick. You talk to people. You go and you talk to people. And I feel like COVID did a very negative disservice to Dynasty in this regard. It was great for Dynasty because it introduced a lot of more people to Dynasty. It kind of exploded during the COVID times. But you saw a lot of leagues fold a couple years down the road, and it didn't live out the way that people really wanted it to in Dynasty. But the number one thing that you can do is just talk to people. Ask them, like, hey, who you think you're going to take in this year's draft class? Like, it doesn't impact me. I just am curious because I'm thinking about trading with the guy after you, and I just don't really want to spend a lot of capital if it means that I'm going to, miss out on my guy because you took him. And you can do that with every single person along there. You don't have to tell them you're asking everybody else, but you can. You can just talk to people, see who they like. You can kind of piece it together in your mind. Maybe they don't explicitly say, oh, I'm really looking for a wide receiver, but they say, I kind of like this group of receivers. Maybe I want a generic one. And you can kind of boil it down to, okay, Rome Odunze is off the board. You've got Malik Neighbors off the board. You got Marv off the board. So they're probably going Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. or Lab McConkey, one of those three guys. Who knows? But it's a receiver, and you can pencil that in. And if you're looking for a receiver, you know roughly where to target in the draft. It's very critical to talk to people in your leagues. And, one of the other things that it really helps with too is trade conversations. When you talk to people, if you just send blind trades out there, you're going to get rejected 90% of the time, 99% of the time, who knows? And if you don't follow up with them, most people never do. They send me blind offers. Oh, we didn't accept it. All right, move on. But if you follow up with people and you just talk to people, or you talk to them beforehand, like, hey, I'm really thinking about trying to get a first round pick in this year's rookie class, right? Are you willing to move off of yours? Is that something that you would be willing to move, or are you locked and loaded on a certain player that falls to you? And you can pair this with who are they going to target at that point? You know what I mean? And talking to them, seeing what they feel about people. This is where you can see how they view players as well. Obviously everybody lies. My players are great. Your players suck. But that's why I'm trying to get your players and get rid of mine because mine are better, right? But in reality, it's somewhere in the middle. If you are a team that really likes Brandon Ayuk, if you really like Brandon Ayuk and they don't really care for him that much, you might be able to go and get him cheaper than you would in another league just because you talk to them and you can ask them their opinion on it, and you just send them a quick message and it starts a little conversation, and it makes the leagues feel so much more alive. I've been in so many leagues where nobody talks, they just send blind offers. They show up for the rookie draft, they set their lineups, and that's it. There's no chit chat in the actual chat. There's no trade offers, nothing, no conversations, and it's just so boring. And it's not what Dynasty is supposed to be. Dynasty is supposed to be a community. It's supposed to be fun for the entire offseason. Now, everybody has different ways of having fun. I do hear that. I understand that completely, but just try not to. Why are you doing this if you're not trying to have fun and interact with the people in your league? So talk to people is the number one lesson that I think I can recommend for people in Dynasty. Get you so much information, and information is so critical. Everybody wants an edge in some way, and the number one way is just to talk to people. Get their ideas, you can find out who hates who, and maybe they'll help you out by trading you somebody that, they wouldn't be willing to trade an opponent because they hate them. Who knows? I have no idea, but just talking to people, it's so critical. And I feel like it's one of the least utilized, easiest ways to get information that you can use to help win your league every single year. Next thing is going to be, don't be stubborn. And this is, again, it's not the most creative headlines. I get it. I understand that. But be willing to be flexible in your team building strategy. Right now, what is popular? What's flavor of the month in fantasy football? Go get young wide receivers and just completely ignore the running backs. I traded Jonathan Taylor just this last week in a league for Devon Achane and Tony Pollard. Both of those guys just for JT. got a little bit younger with Achane, a little bit higher ceiling. I like Tony Pollard quite a bit this year, so he's going to be someone that I'm really looking forward to over in Tennessee. Nobody wants to buy a single running back. I tried to flip Devon Achane after that, and, say what you will. I understand the risks with him. I'm not asking for a, king's ransom for Devon Achane. I'm just trying to get fair value or even a player that's a little bit undervalued. There's all these teams that have, funnily enough, in that league that I was trying to get a younger receiver, like a George Pickens or DJ Moore, some of those back end wide receiver twos for Devon Achane straight up, because I need some youth at receiver in that league, right? So I'm trying to fix one of my holes in my roster, but nobody is willing to move a single receiver when they have 9 deep for a single running back. You go to some of these trade calculators and they'll rank your teams, right? And this is a very anecdotal argument, but I've seen it across every single league universally. When there's a prevailing narrative on how to do Dynasty the best way, people always flock to the strategy, and it just leaves so much meat on the bone. You're not a holistic team. You're not doing a full approach to building your team. And so going back to it, you look at these rank years, right? And all these teams that I'm trying to get, they have 9 wide receivers that are all in the George Pickens or better range. They're top 5 dynasty rosters. And if you look at there, it breaks it down by position. Almost universally to a man, these teams are bottom 3 in most cases for the running back position. Their number one starters like Jalen Warren, or there was one team, the number one starter was the guy from Buffalo that they just drafted, the rookie. It's slipping my mind right now, but you guys know who I'm talking about. They have no running backs, none whatsoever, and they're not willing to give up a single receiver. So be flexible. Don't be stubborn. Like, I understand that it's very popular to go and get all these young receivers, but it just leaves the alternative route for people out there to go and just load up on running backs. And, it's risky. It is definitely more risky because of the shortened lifespan for running backs, but it's also very profitable if you can get 3, 4, 5 top running backs. The gap between wide receiver 24 every single year and wide receiver 48 is about 2 points per game. 2 points per game over a whole season. That's 34 points. Are you telling me that 34 points is going to be make or break between, the running back 12, which the gap between 12 and 24, even just 1 to 2, the back end running back 1 to the back end running back 2 is closer to 5 or 6 points. It's a huge gap over a whole season, right? 5 times 17 is what? About 85 points versus 34. That's 3 times the points. It's crazy to me how people are just completely disregarding the running back position right now because of the fact that everyone wants these receivers. And that goes for players as well. You see all these guys that are just unwilling to move off their stance of a player. Kyle Pitts is bad now he's rising, we'll say. But for many years, people are saying Kyle Pitts is bad just because he had bad quarterback play. Why don't we look into a little bit of the context behind that? And this is something that just drives me crazy, is nobody wants to look at the context behind anything. They just want to draft their team and then just go and plug it and win. And it's like, if you want to do that, that's fine. That is completely fine. That's up to you. But there are ways to be better. And this is for the people out there who truly want to be better at fantasy football and are looking for some of those small edges. And this is what's helped me. Again, it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, going and getting multiple running backs that I can start in my starting running back slots and my flex slots, and then kind of going a little bit more bare bones on the receivers. It's worked in multiple leagues where I am now a 4-time in a row playoff contender because I have no real amazing. I don't have the Jamar Chase in my league, but I've got Chris Olave, who's my number 1, and my number 2 might be Chris Godwin. It's not an amazing 1-2 punch, but I can make up for those points in the other positions. And not being stubborn, being flexible is so critical to building your roster. If everybody, everyone loves to hate on the New England Patriots because they were a dynasty for so long. But what did the Patriots do that always made them relevant for the NFL. When everyone zigged, they zagged. When everyone was going towards the scat back and the standard, the get them in space type of running back, the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Christian McCaffrey, those type of guys, they went and got Sony Michel and they won a Super Bowl on the back of Sony Michel in I formation. It's just, they are always willing to zig when everyone else zags, and it can be so valuable, especially in fantasy football. Number 3, I've got 4 here that I'm going through, but number 3, take some risk. This can be double-edged, right? This can definitely hurt more than it helps. And there's a certain league where this blew up in my face. You have to be a little bit, you can't do risk with no accountability. That's just, you're not a gold card member where they're just going to continuously pay you to miss on these players, right? But going and getting like a Rashad Bateman this time of year, there's so many receivers that I've talked about, and some of these running backs and these later round picks that nobody cares about whatsoever. Zach Moss. Nobody wants to invest in Zach Moss. Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to invest in Rashad Bateman. But going and giving up something small to go and get those players, it's so critical, because if they hit and if they pay off, you have such a huge advantage because everyone is writing them off. Quentin Johnson was a first-round pick last year. There's an article that came out this weekend about how Quentin Johnson is not a top, he's not even going to be a starter in 11 personnel. You know the source? Trust me, bro. That was the source. It was an Athletic article where the guy said, in my opinion, I don't think he's going to be a starter. What kind of source is that? That's terrible. But you know what I saw? Sleeper tweeted it out. Everyone has been talking about that article. Oh, Quentin Johnson's a bust. Oh, Quentin Johnson is worth completely nothing. And did John Harbaugh say that? Did a team source say that? Did the guy even say, sources with the team have told me that he's not going to be a starter in 11 personnel in training camp? No, it's literally, he said, I think my brain says that it doesn't make sense. Him and DJ Chark play similar positions. The guy was a first-round pick last year. All the coaching staff has done is talk up Quentin Johnson. The dude is completely free right now. And if Quentin Johnson can be a first-round pick like we all expected him to be last year, he's free. And you have a potential top 24 receiver for free. It's just a huge advantage when he's worth nothing. I think he's like wide receiver 70-something. Same with Gabe Davis. I've talked about Gabe Davis, Deontay Johnson, all these guys. You can get them so cheap. And if they finish is even a fringe wide receiver 1, it's just such an amazing return on your investment that it's a little bit of risk, because yes, there's a chance that Quentin Johnson busts. It's probably like a pretty decently high chance at this point in time. Let's say it's a 35-40% chance. Still a 60 to 65% chance that he becomes fantasy relevant. The dude had 1 year in the league. So why are we completely writing him off? Take a little bit of risk. Don't be so stubborn with these players that you think are going to be bust. Be willing to open your mind to other players that are, air quote, bad. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm doing the quotations, right? But if everyone's saying that they're bad, doesn't mean that they're bad just because people are saying it. You need to prove it on the field. Now, again, Quentin Johnson he's not the best example. He didn't have the best rookie season, but he was a rookie. Can we give people a little bit of a grace period to potentially develop in the NFL? I don't know. Maybe I'm the crazy one here. But you see this every single year. There's players that get vaulted to the top in terms of player value. You know, a couple years ago it was DJ Moore. He was the wide receiver 4 while he was still in Carolina. Did not pan out. They traded for Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold could not make him a top 4 wide receiver that year. Completely destroyed DJ Moore's value. Last year, what does he do? He comes back and he is amazing for fantasy football. You need to just be able to think for yourself, take a little bit of risk, but also don't be stubborn. And then the last thing I want to talk about, the last tip here, it's going to be learn your lessons from year to year. Don't just assume that you had bad RNG or, you got unlucky for things. You need to make sure you go back and you reanalyze the process that led you to the bad decision. And this might be an engineering thing. So this is the way that I kind of do it, whether you are tracking it in Excel or you just go back to Sleeper and you look at what you did week in, week out, right? You go back to last year and you say, I started doing this last year in Excel. It's not a super fancy Excel spreadsheet, but I would put in the weekly starters for each league. I would update the starters that I had for each league, how many points they scored, and what they finished as the, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4 that week. And I would look at, why did I start them? Why did I miss, right? And I do that for the entire season. And then after the season, I'd go back and I look like, why did I really never start player X in this league? Is it just because of the name value? Was I just being too chicken to play him? I clearly tracked it week in and week out. So I could see that, let's say Zach Moss, right? Zach Moss was finishing as a top 24 running back every single week. And I was still starting guys over him, that were finishing outside of the top 24. Was I just scared that this was the week that he was going to fall off? Potentially. I need to fix that going forward. And that's something that I need to reanalyze and make these decisions a little bit more objectively and analyze my decision process on what led me to make that decision. You can't do that if you're just assuming that you got unlucky. Now, obviously, there's definitely some luck to it. There's a couple years ago, where in a league, I was in the finals of 4 leagues. 3 of them, I played against Jamar Chase, and that was the game. That was his rookie season where he went out and put a 50-burger in the fantasy playoffs. I got eliminated in 4 fantasy playoffs finals because of Jamar Chase. And just that one hurt. That was bad RNG, but the fact that I was playing Jamar Chase in 3 leagues, all in the finals, was just nuts. So bad RNG does happen, but there's nothing I can do to change that. I can't control what they're going to do against me. I can only control what I'm doing every single week, week in and week out, how I'm approaching the rookie drafts. You go back and you look at the last couple of rookie drafts. Have you missed on players? Is that why your roster's in a bad spot? Because you haven't looked at the players correctly? Are you always taking risks on project players, like the Keon Colemans or the Quentin Johnstons or, the big guys, the big body guys? And, every 1 in 10 hits, but those other 9 really kind of hurt when you're not getting the value off them. Is that something that you need to go back and look at? Nobody can tell you what it is, but is it your trades, right? Is it you're always getting fleeced in your trades? You're always taking the bad side of a trade. Well, why are you doing that? You need to go back and you need to look at that. So learn your lessons from year to year is also very critical for Dynasty. What are we doing this over a long period of time for if it's not to get better at it, right? That's where I feel like a lot of people treat it like a redraft. And I've seen this too. There's a guy in multiple of my leagues that's in 200 Dynasty leagues. It's like, what are you even doing? He has a algorithm that does his start and sit. He's not even starting and sitting in his team. Barely ever checks trade offers, all that stuff. Why are we in so many leagues, guys? I feel like a lot of people, and again, maybe COVID had a little bit of to do with this, but a lot of people, they just wanted to join leagues just to join them. Go join DraftKings, man, if you want to do that kind of stuff. Do a best ball or something like that. But yeah, I think that make sure that you're having fun, but learn from year to year. And you have to be able to go back and analyze how you did last year. That's the only way you're going to get better at it. So these are my tips for fantasy football. Again, this is I've been doing this for a long time, and I wanted to give some of the best tips and tricks that I could for getting those small edges and talking to people. Don't be stubborn, take a little bit of risk, and then just learn and adapt as you go forward. I think those are very basic things, but once you contextualize how much that impacts fantasy football, I don't think a lot of people appreciate the small edges that it can give you. So wanted to talk that over with you guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Is this too basic? Am I an idiot? Am I overlooking something? Let me know all your thoughts down below. I appreciate hearing from you guys. We'll be back on Wednesday night live with Dale. So make sure you guys check it out for that one. Again, follow us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at FF After Dark for the podcast. Dale is at Dynasty_Dale. But We appreciate hearing from you guys, and we are very excited as the NFL season is kicking up. Dale's baby is due in just a couple weeks, so we only have a couple more weeks of Dale for the next couple months, but we are going to have a good time, and hopefully his little baby will be a bundle of joy. But we'll keep you guys in the loop on all that as we keep moving forward. And until next time, thank you guys so much for listening, and have a great night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?